Christmas Eve used to mean something. I guess it still did, just not the way I remembered. Not the way it used to feel before the accident, before the wheelchair, before my dad's company went public and made us so rich he forgot how to come home. This year, it was just me. I was parked in my chair by the front window, watching the snow fall over our long, empty driveway. My fingers sat idle on the joystick. I'd gone as far as the kitchen earlier to microwave the sad pre-made turkey dinner one of our staff had left for me. She offered to stay, but I told her no. She had a family. I didn't want her pity. I wasn't supposed to be alone. My dad promised he'd fly back from London in time, but I got a text that morning, delayed again. "Make the best of it, kid," it said. I stared at it for 5 minutes before deleting it. I should probably explain. My name's Ethan. I'm 25, the only son of Lucas Merrick, founder and CEO of Merrick Biotech. When I was 20, I was in a car accident that left me paralyzed from the waist down. Ever since, my dad's way of coping has been to keep himself on a plane, working, investing, growing the company that once gave me hope I might walk again, except they haven't. None of their stem cell trials or exosuits or rehab programs worked, not for me. So here I was, alone in this absurd 10-bedroom house on a hill outside Denver, while a soft jazz playlist looped on the smart speakers like some joke about how rich people mourn. I didn't even hear the knock at first. I thought it was the wind. But then it came again. 3 firm knocks. I turned toward the door, heart suddenly racing. No one ever came here uninvited. I rolled over slowly, pushing the joystick with my thumb. The foyer was dim, lit only by the glow of the Christmas tree I didn't decorate. As I opened the front door, a gust of freezing air rushed in. Standing there was a man in a tan shearling coat and a dusting of snow on his shoulders. He was tall, probably in his 40s, with a rugged jaw and the kind of face that looked like it belonged on a ranch. Behind him was someone else, younger, around my age, slightly shorter, with dark curls under a knit cap and the warmest brown eyes I'd ever seen. "Evening," the older man said. "Sorry to bother you. Our truck slid off the road about half a mile back. Cell reception's dead out here, and yours is the only house we've seen with lights." I stared for a second, caught off guard. They looked like they'd stepped out of a Western movie, but also like real people. The younger guy offered a shy smile. "I'm Bo," the man said, tipping his head. "And this here's my nephew, Colton." "I'm Ethan," I said, voice catching in my throat. "Come in, please." They stomped their boots and stepped inside. Bo took off his hat. Colton unzipped his coat slowly, his eyes scanning the foyer like he wasn't sure he belonged. "You okay?" I asked, turning to him. He nodded. "Yeah, just cold, thank you." Bo explained their truck hit a patch of ice on the old highway and skidded into a ditch. They were heading to a ranch a few towns over where they'd be spending the holidays with some extended family. I nodded, trying to focus, but my brain was still catching up. It had been weeks since someone new had looked at me and not immediately glanced down at the chair. "You live here alone?" Bo asked casually. I hesitated, then nodded. "For now." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. "Mind if we sit a spell? Just till the snow lets up or we figure out the truck situation?" I looked between them. Colton had started to rub his hands together, clearly trying to stay warm. "Yeah," I said, backing my chair up. "Please. The kitchen's warm." I led them into the kitchen, which was really more of a showroom than a room anyone cooked in. Our live-in chef, when we had one, used to joke that it felt like prepping dinner in a luxury car commercial. Granite everything, brushed gold fixtures, an island so big it had its own zip code. Bo gave a low whistle. "Fancy digs," I half laughed. My dad likes to remind people he made it out of nothing. Bo just nodded. Sometimes the people who come from the least gotta build the most to feel safe. That line stuck with me, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I turned to Colton, who was hanging his coat on the back of a chair, his eyes roaming the space like he was seeing a museum. His cheeks were flushed, not from the cold, but in that way someone looks when they're trying not to seem overwhelmed. "You want coffee? Or, something stronger?" I asked. "Coffee sounds great," he said softly. I turned the wheelchair toward the machine, thankful for the accessibility renovations that made small things, like reaching the cabinet, less humiliating. Still, I always felt a little self-conscious when strangers saw me move around like this. Not because I was embarrassed to be disabled, but because I could feel the shift in people's eyes when they watched, the way they politely pretended not to notice. But Colton didn't do that. He didn't look away or pretend like nothing had changed in the room. He just watched me like he was watching anyone do something routine. Something normal. Bo took a seat at the far end of the island. "So what's a young guy like you doing here all by himself on Christmas Eve?" I shrugged. "Dad's working. Switzerland, I think. And my mom passed a couple years ago." A pause. "Sorry to hear that," Bo said, voice lower now. "Thanks," I said. "It's just kinda how the holidays go around here." Colton spoke up then, voice almost a whisper. "That's rough." I glanced at him, surprised at the softness in his tone. He wasn't trying to fill space or make small talk. He meant it. He moved slowly around the island, pulling out a stool near me but not too close. Respectful. A little careful. We sat in a strange quiet for a minute, broken only by the coffee maker gurgling to life. Bo let out a breath. "Truck's not going anywhere tonight, that's for sure. Mind if we wait out the storm here, Ethan?" I hesitated, not because I didn't want them to stay, but because I couldn't remember the last time anyone had wanted to stay. "No," I said. "I'd like that." Colton smiled, really smiled this time, and it caught me off guard. His teeth were just a little crooked, and he had one of those dimples that only showed up when he wasn't trying. Something shifted in my chest. He held my gaze a second longer than I expected, then looked away like he wasn't sure if he'd stared too long. I handed him his mug. He took it from me carefully, fingers brushing mine. "Thanks." I swallowed. "You ever been to Denver before?" He shook his head. "First time. Usually stay out in Walsenburg. Small town stuff. Horses, roosters, grandma who thinks Wi-Fi is witchcraft." I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in days. "Sounds like a different planet." "It is," he said, smiling down at his cup. "But sometimes it's nice not to be connected to everything." Bo stood up, stretching. "Well, if you boys don't mind, I might take a little nap on that couch I saw near the entry. Long day, longer drive." "You sure?" I asked. He winked. "I trust Colton's manners. Plus, I got a bad back. Leather couch is calling my name." He was gone before I could say more. Suddenly, it was just Colton and me in the kitchen. He sipped his coffee, tapping the side of the mug with his finger. "Thanks again, you didn't have to let us in." "It's Christmas," I said. "I think that's still a rule." "Still, not everyone would have." I looked at him, at the way the soft overhead lights hit his face just right. There was a quiet honesty to him I wasn't used to. "You know," I said, almost without thinking, "this is the first time I've had company on Christmas since I got hurt." He looked up. "I don't know why I said that," I added quickly. "Sorry, that's weird." "It's not weird," he said. "I'm glad we're here then." And the way he said that, like he meant every word, made something ache in a part of me I hadn't felt in a long time. I never planned to spend Christmas Eve sitting across from a cowboy's nephew, sipping coffee, and talking like we'd known each other longer than 10 minutes. But that's what was happening. Colton wasn't like the people I was used to, those who looked past me, or worse, only saw the chair. He didn't do either. He wasn't filling silences with pity or avoiding the topic altogether. He just sat with me, like I was still me. We ended up in the den, where the fireplace turned on with a remote, another one of my dad's tech upgrades meant to make things easier. The flames flickered quietly, casting a soft glow that bounced off the glass ornaments on the tree. Colton leaned back into the couch with a little sigh. This is the kind of room I'd see in a movie and never believe anyone actually used. Because no one does, I said. It's for show. My dad likes appearances. He glanced over at me. You don't? I shrugged. I did, once. Then life got complicated. Now I think I'd trade this entire house for a cabin with working plumbing, and someone who made coffee without a Keurig. Colton smiled at that, and I caught it again. That flash of something in his eyes that was more than friendly. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it. I'd spent so long assuming I wasn't looked at that way anymore. It was hard to trust what I thought I saw. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Can I ask you something personal? My pulse jumped. Sure. What happened? I looked down at my hands. People usually didn't ask. They danced around it, treating my paralysis like some private wound they didn't want to disturb. But Colton just came out with it, respectfully, calmly. Car accident, I said. 5 years ago. I was a college sophomore, going to a New Year's Eve party. My friend was driving. Black ice. We slid off the road and into a ravine. I broke my back. He nodded slowly. That must have been hard. It was, I said. Still is. But I got lucky in a weird way. My dad had money. Rehab, equipment, home care, all of it. I know other guys who didn't have any of that. He was quiet for a moment. Still doesn't make it easy. No, I said. It doesn't. The fire crackled beside us. He watched the flames for a bit before turning back to me. Can I ask another thing? I raised an eyebrow. You're on a roll. He smiled. You date? It was so direct I actually blinked. Not really. Not since the accident? He asked gently. I hesitated. There was one guy. A few years ago. It didn't last. He was more into playing caretaker than partner. After that, I stopped trying. Colton nodded. That makes sense. I narrowed my eyes slightly. What about you? You date? He chuckled under his breath. Not much out in Walsenburg. Small town, few guys, even fewer who are out. I've had a couple flings, but not a real relationship. You gay? I asked. I wasn't sure if I was pushing too far, but I wanted to know. He didn't flinch. Yeah. It hung in the air between us. Simple, honest. And then he said it. I don't usually go for rich guys with houses bigger than the entire town I grew up in, but there's something about you. That caught me completely off guard. I laughed, partly from shock. Is that your way of flirting? Maybe, he said, that crooked smile returning. Is it working? I looked at him. Really looked. His shirt was still damp at the collar from the snow, and his dark curls were starting to dry in messy clumps. There was a light in his eyes that wasn't just attraction. It was kindness, curiosity, and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Interest. It might be, I said. He leaned back again, stretching his arms above his head with a little groan. You tired? I asked. A little. But this is the best Christmas Eve I've had in years. That surprised me. Seriously? Yeah. No offense, but I didn't think this night would end with a fire and decent company. I tilted my head. What did you think it would end with? Probably me and Beau in a motel with a busted heater eating gas station burritos. I grinned. Well, I guess I'm glad your truck crashed into a ditch. He raised his mug toward me. Best accident of the year. We sat there a while longer, and the conversation drifted. At one point, our shoulders brushed, and neither of us moved. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I didn't need it to mean anything right away. It just felt okay. Good, even. At some point, Beau reappeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes and asking if we had a spare blanket. I grabbed one from the linen closet off the hall, easy enough to reach, and handed it to him with a nod. Appreciate it, he said, then glanced between Colton and me. Y'all good in here? Colton answered before I could. Yeah, we're good. Beau just gave a knowing look and disappeared back into the living room, where the oversized leather couch probably swallowed him whole. After that, the house fell quiet again. Outside, the wind had calmed. The snow was still falling, but slower now, soft and steady. I could see it through the window behind Colton's head, the flurries catching in the glow of the driveway lights. He turned back toward me, his expression more relaxed than earlier, like he'd shed whatever layer of polite formality he'd been carrying. "I gotta say," he murmured, "you surprised me." "Yeah, you're not what I expected." I smiled faintly. "Because I live in a mansion and use a wheelchair?" "No," he said quickly. "Well, I mean, maybe a little at first, but more like you're funny. And real. And you didn't flinch when we showed up looking like a couple of lost farmhands." "That's not nothing," I admitted. "People usually either panic or start treating me like I'm fragile." He leaned his head back against the cushion, gazing up at the ceiling. "My cousin was in a wreck a few years ago. Lost a leg. The way people acted around him changed overnight. Even folks who'd known him his whole life started babying him. Drove him crazy." "Yeah," I said. "That sounds familiar." Colton looked at me again, and this time his gaze didn't waver. "I don't see you that way," he said. "Just so you know." I didn't answer right away. There was something in the way he said it. No big declaration, no pity, just calm, plain honesty. It disarmed me. "I don't know what this is," I said quietly. "You and me. I mean, we met 2 hours ago." "I know," he said. "But sometimes that's enough." He shifted slightly, resting one arm along the back of the couch, which brought his hand just behind my shoulder. Not touching, but close. Very close. There was a pause, like we were both waiting to see who'd move first. I was suddenly hyper-aware of how long it had been since anyone touched me in a way that wasn't medical or cautious. Since someone had just looked at me and wanted to be near me without checking a list of risks first. "You ever feel like your life got split in two?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Like everything before one moment doesn't quite belong to the same you?" "All the time," Colton said. "For me, it was when my dad left. I was 16. After that, it felt like every version of me had to grow up too fast." I looked at him. He wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to impress me. He just understood. Without thinking, I shifted closer, not much, just a few inches, and said, "I'm glad you knocked on my door tonight." He smiled, soft and slow. "Me too." We didn't kiss. Not then. It wasn't that kind of moment. It was quieter. Warmer. The kind where two people sit close, shoulders barely brushing, hearts slowly aligning like stars you don't notice until they're already overhead. Eventually, I checked the clock. It was almost midnight. "Merry Christmas," I said, voice a little hoarse. Colton looked at me and nodded. "Merry Christmas, Ethan." I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed replaying every second of that quiet conversation with Colton. The way he looked at me, the way he didn't flinch, didn't look past me or talk around the obvious. That mattered more than I could explain. At some point, I dozed off. When I woke, it was still quiet, still dim, the winter light just starting to creep through the blinds. I pulled myself into my chair and rolled out into the hallway. The house felt different. Not because it was Christmas morning, but because, for the first time in years, I wasn't alone in it. In the living room, Beau was already up, sipping coffee by the front window in his thermal shirt and jeans, blanket folded neatly beside him. He looked more alert than anyone who'd slept on a leather couch had a right to. "Mornin'," he said. "Hope we didn't overstay." "Not at all," I said. "Storm's still going anyway." He turned to the window. "Looks like it." I noticed Colton wasn't with him. "He's in the kitchen," Beau said, like he could read my mind. "Making eggs. Said he felt weird not contributing." That made me smile. "He doesn't have to." "Try telling him that," Beau chuckled. Then he gave me a look. Not smug, but not innocent either. "Y'all had a good talk last night." "Yeah," I said quietly. "We did. Bo nodded. He's a good kid, sensitive, but not in a weak way. The kind that listens more than he talks. Rare these days. I wasn't sure what to say, so I just nodded. He's been through some stuff, Bo added, but he's solid. Yeah, I said again. I could tell. When I wheeled into the kitchen, Colton was at the stove, sleeves rolled up, barefoot, flipping scrambled eggs with a little too much focus. A slice of toast popped from the smart toaster, and he jumped a little, startled. He turned and grinned when he saw me. "Hope you don't mind," he said. "I found everything easy enough." "I don't mind." "I'm impressed," I said. "Didn't peg you as a breakfast guy." "I'm not," he said, "but you let us in last night. Seemed like the least I could do." I watched him plate eggs and toast with surprising finesse. He set one down in front of me without asking, then slid onto a stool beside me with his own. We ate in easy silence for a while. "This your usual Christmas morning?" he asked eventually. I shook my head. Used to be chaotic. Music, champagne, a mountain of gifts. My mom always made cinnamon rolls. My dad wore ugly sweaters. Then she got sick. After that, it all stopped. Colton didn't say anything for a second. "That's a hard thing to lose." "Yeah." Another pause. Then he said, "What would you be doing right now if things were different?" "You mean if I wasn't paralyzed?" He looked at me. "I mean, if you could be anywhere. With anyone." I thought for a second. "Probably traveling. Somewhere warm. Maybe Key West. Or a cabin in California with someone who actually wanted to be there. Someone who'd cook me eggs." Colton laughed. "Guess we're halfway there." I looked at him. Really looked at him. Before I could think too hard, I said it. "You want to stay another night?" He blinked. "You sure? I mean, assuming the truck's still out of commission and you're not dying to get back to Walsenburg." He smiled. And it wasn't shy this time. "I'd like that." I felt something shift again. Not big, not dramatic. Just quiet and certain. And maybe for the first time in years, I looked around my house and didn't see an empty stage. I saw a beginning. The rest of Christmas Day passed in a way I never could have predicted. And that's what made it feel so damn real. We didn't do anything extravagant. No gifts. No giant feast. No social media perfect scenes and matching pajamas. But it was the first time in years that I felt something that came close to normal. Or maybe it wasn't normal. It was better than that. It was honest. After breakfast, Bo spent most of the day fiddling with his phone near the front window, trying to get a signal so he could call a tow. He eventually gave up, muttering something about just giving up and letting the truck hibernate. Colton and I ended up in the den again, this time on the same couch. We found some old Christmas movies on a streaming service and half-watched them while talking through the parts we didn't care about. I don't even remember what movies we played. All I remember is the way he looked at me. At one point, I asked if he wanted to try out the snow ramp out back. It was a custom-built path that curved down into the backyard, one of the few things I had insisted on when the renovations were done. We bundled up, him in that same shearling jacket, me in layers that never quite fit the way they used to, and headed outside. The ramp had a thin layer of snow, but my wheels could handle it. Colton walked beside me, hands tucked in his jacket, boots crunching the fresh powder. "I can't believe this is your backyard," he said. "You could fit a whole ranch out here." "Don't tempt Bo," I said. "He'd start planting corn." Colton laughed, and we stood at the bottom of the slope, looking out over the open white stretch. Trees lined the far end, frosted like something out of a snow globe. It was silent in that way only winter can be, thick, still, unshakable. "You ever feel lonely out here?" he asked, suddenly quieter. I nodded. "All the time." He didn't say anything right away. Then he crouched beside me, resting his arms on his knees, looking at me more seriously than he had all day. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" I smirked. "That's becoming a theme." He chuckled but didn't back down. "Do you still feel wanted?" The question hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about chillin' or dating or being looked at. It was about something deeper, about being seen, being desired, being held without conditions. I answered honestly, "Not really. Not in a long time. Colton nodded like he understood. That's not fair. I didn't know what to say to that. But then he stood, brushed the snow off his jeans, and held out his hand. Not to pull me up, obviously, but to rest it gently on my shoulder. Warm, steady, present. You're easy to want, he said. Just like that. No fanfare. My chest tightened, and I felt something shift, not just in me, but in the air between us. You mean that? I asked, voice lower. He nodded. Yeah, I mean it. Later that night, after dinner, which we pieced together from leftovers and whatever we could find in the pantry, Bo announced he was going to bed early. Colton and I lingered in the den again. The fire was on, and the tree lights still glowed faintly behind us. I should probably go lie down too, he said eventually. Bo's taking the guest room, but I can crash on the couch. I hesitated. There's another room upstairs with an adjustable bed and everything. It's kind of a second guest space. It's yours if you want it. He looked at me like he knew what I wasn't saying out loud. And then he asked, what if I just stayed in here? With you? I didn't answer at first. Then I said, you sure? He stepped closer. Yeah. I reached for the blanket draped over the armrest and pulled it over my lap. Okay, I said quietly. Then stay. He sat beside me. Not too close. Not yet. Just close enough. And that night, as the fire flickered low, we didn't talk much. He just leaned in until his shoulder rested against mine, and I let it happen. The room was warm, but I could still feel the cold air brushing up against the windows, trying to get in. Colton and I sat shoulder to shoulder under the soft throw blanket. We weren't touching in any obvious way, but we weren't not touching either. He didn't lean away, and neither did I. We didn't say much. The kind of quiet that stretched between us wasn't awkward. It was safe. Steady. I'd forgotten what that felt like. You good? He asked, his voice low. I nodded, but added, yeah, just haven't done this in a while. He didn't pretend not to know what I meant. Me neither. After a moment, he shifted, turning toward me a little more, enough that I could feel his leg lightly pressing against mine. It was so subtle, but it felt huge, bigger than any conversation we'd had so far. I wasn't planning on this, he said. Getting stuck in a snowstorm? He smiled. No, sitting on a couch next to someone who makes me feel like I've known them a lot longer than 24 hours. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, same. His eyes met mine again, still warm, still steady, and he gave me a look that made the space between us feel even smaller. I want to kiss you, he said. My heart skipped. It wasn't how I expected that moment to go. There was no over-explaining, no hesitation in his tone. Just the truth. Simple. Undressed. I looked at him. Okay. He leaned in, slow enough that I had time to feel every second of it. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't testing me. He was just there, present. When his lips touched mine, it was soft, careful, but not uncertain. I kissed him back. And for the first time in 5 years, maybe longer, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel like a version of something I used to be. I just felt wanted, held, real. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead lightly against mine. That okay? He whispered. I nodded. Better than okay. We stayed like that for a bit, quiet, close, a different kind of warmth blooming between us. Eventually, I yawned, and Colton smirked. Guess I'm not that exciting. No, I said. You're too good at making me feel safe. That's all. He didn't move away. You want to stay in here tonight? I asked. He hesitated. Not out of doubt, but like he was doing the math on what that meant. Then he nodded. I'd like that. I pulled the blanket up a little more. He reached around and adjusted one of the throw pillows behind my back like it was second nature. Like he'd been doing it for years. We lay there, me in the corner of the couch, him curled close beside me, and I let my eyes fall closed to the sound of his breathing. The fire crackled low. Outside, the snow had finally stopped. I woke up to the smell of coffee and something warm in the air that wasn't just heat. It was presence. Colton wasn't on the couch anymore. His side of the blanket was still crumpled, still faintly warm. I sat up slowly, adjusted my position in the chair, and followed the scent toward the kitchen. He was there, barefoot again, wearing the same rumpled flannel from last night, humming something under his breath as he poured coffee into 2 mugs. "You always make breakfast for people you just met?" I teased. He turned with a small grin. "Only if they kiss me before bed." That made me laugh, and the sound felt new in my chest. Clean. I wheeled up to the island, and he slid a mug toward me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I found some pancake mix," he said. "Wasn't sure if that was pushing it." "It's not," I said. "It's perfect. We ate in the same way we talked last night, easy, unforced, with those little pauses that weren't silence so much as shared space. Every now and then, I'd catch him looking at me with that look, the one that wasn't about pity or curiosity, but plain interest. When we were finished, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and asked, "So what now?" I looked up. "What do you mean?" I don't want this to just be a weird snowstorm memory you tell people about one day. I don't want it to be one of those, "remember that one night?" kind of things. I stared at him. "You want more?" He nodded. "I think I do." That stunned me. Not because I didn't feel the same, but because I didn't think guys like him, quiet, thoughtful, grounded, ever looked at me and thought, "Yes, I want more of this." "You sure?" I asked. He gave me that look again, the steady one, like he already knew I doubt it. I'm not the type to say something I don't mean. I sat there for a long second, then said, "Okay, then let's figure it out." He reached across the counter, not fast, not dramatic, and set his hand lightly on mine. Bo walked in not long after, boots already on, clearly having shoveled off the driveway. "Tao's coming in about an hour," he announced. "Truck's gonna need more than a jump." Colton glanced at me. Then, back at Bo. "We might stick around another day or two, if that's all right." Bo looked at me, then back at his nephew. "You sure about that?" Colton nodded. Bo just gave a slow, knowing smile. "All right then, guess I'll cancel that motel reservation." That night, we sat by the fire again, not like strangers, not like guests, but like people who were trying something. Something real, something new, something that maybe started on a snowy Christmas Eve in a too-big house with a 10-foot tree and a CEO who never came home. And as Colton leaned into me again, pulling the blanket over our legs, I didn't think about the accident, or the silence that had lived in this house for too long. I just thought about now, about him, about how sometimes the most unexpected knocks on your door turn into everything you didn't know you were still allowed to hope for.